Hello, my name is Virgil, and today I want to talk about John Christopher's The Little People. I decided to read this after reading Grady Hendrix's Paperbacks from Hell. It's actually, I think, the first book that he talks about, this discovering, and the cover was crazy. This cover is not the cover that he was talking about. Actually, I'll try to put that cover on the screen. Now, that cover makes you think that this book is going to be a certain way. It certainly did me. It made me think it was going to be a very bombastic or like crazy sort of story, and that is not at all what's going on. I think, in fact, the New York Times' quote for this book of carefully laid on horror is pretty accurate. It's a very slow paced book. It's a very well written book, but the pacing is not fast. So the book follows Bridget, who has inherited a sort of pseudo house castle in the Irish countryside. She and her fiance decide to go visit this castle, and she decides to turn it into a bed and breakfast, somewhat to sort of be independent and somewhat to sort of spite her fiance, who thinks that maybe she can't do it. There at the home are a caretaker she's been living there for a long time, sort of as a housemaid and kind of cook for like a distant relative of Bridget's, and like a young girl. This sort of housekeeper and this young girl were sort of like taking care of the place. They're there. Then the lawyer that contacts Bridget, his son Matt, also comes along and sort of helps Bridget to sort of get the house fixed up. He sort of has like an early sort of infatuation with Bridget. Bridget inspects this house, and she decides that yes, she's going to turn this into a bed and breakfast. So that's kind of her idea. Her fiance kind of says like, "Oh yeah, you're already just joking," and she's it irritates her, and she decides that yeah, she's going to make this a bed and breakfast. After that, we transition to the house guest coming to stay at this manor, I guess you'd call it. They're calling it a castle. It's not exactly it feels more like a castle that's sort of been like fixed up to be a house, sort of like a pseudo castle. The characters who are going to come stay at this bed and breakfast that Bridget's going to do, they're all developed in we get like sort of flashbacks to them, like a little bit of their history and what's going on, and then them showing up to spend a week or two in the Irish countryside. I would say the first half of the book is just that. There's a little bit of a mystery there as to in the castle tower. There's these sort of like a collection of dollhouses that's there that are and it seems strange because Bridget's uncle, I believe, distant uncle, for him to have this sort of area of the castle in the tower, which the housekeeper never visits. Then it's kept locked to have these dollhouses in there. It just seems very strange. And that's sort of like he was just kind of a weird old guy. Bridget does discover a diary up there, but can't read it because she doesn't know what language it's in. And one of the house guests is German and says, "Oh, this is German." And he becomes interested in reading it. But the first half of the book is just that stuff. I mean, there's a little bit of the mystery, and it's just sort of building these characters up. And then the third quarter, second half of the book, first quarter, is starting to develop this concept of the little people, right? These small people, about a foot tall, that live kind of hidden in this manner. Grady Hendrix, let me actually read you what he said. This is where you're going to, I would think, discover this book from this Paperbacks from Hell, not necessarily unless you're a real big John Christopher fan, which there are. I would just be surprised that you would dig so deep and find this novel, which I don't know how popular a novel of John Christopher's it is, but let me just read to you what Paperbacks from Hell says. Or at least I'm going to give you a little sample of what it says. A gorgeous secretary inherits an Irish castle from a distant relative and converts it into a B&B to show her patronizing lawyer fiancé that she can stand her own. On opening weekend, the house is full of guests: an Irish dreamboat alcoholic, two bickering Americans with a hot-to-trot teenage daughter, and a married couple who met in a concentration camp where he was a guard and she was a prisoner. Right. That's kind of like, okay, that's an interesting setup. We're kind of throwing everything in here. But some uninvited guests are lurking in the basement, the Gestapocons. The Gestapocons live in the dark, battling their ancient rat enemies with teeny bullwhips. Now, I'm not saying that this, first of all, I kind of wish the word Gestapocons was in the Little People. It's not. And I think that Grady Hendrix goes a long way to sort of like build you up for this book. I'm not saying that that's necessarily, it's slightly misleading because it makes it seem like this book is crazy, and it's not crazy like that. It's very metered, very paced out. I will say I've only read John Christopher's The Tripod series, the first 3 books. I have not read the 4th book, which is actually a prequel. So I wasn't really very familiar with John Christopher's writing apart from that, which is for young adults. And I will say that almost right away it struck me how well written Little People was. I mean, John Christopher is writing, I don't know if all his writing is like this, but it's very good writing, very good quality writing. It seems like he took a little time. I kind of wonder, like, why did he write this book? Who is this book for? What is he trying to do with this book? It seems like such a small little novel. Like was he really this interested in this idea? I thought that for a long time in reading this book. Like, what did he write this book for? What is this supposed to do? And it's only after I finished the book that I feel like I had a better idea as to what was going on. This is one of the 2 images in Paperbacks from Hell from this book. I'm going to see if we can get a good close-up of it. Right there. You might not be able to read that, so I'm going to read it for you. It says, they speak German, they carry whips, and they are connected to some mysterious way. Let's try this again. They speak German, they carry whips, and they are connected in some mysterious way with Nazi experiments carried out in a charming old Irish castle during World War II, when members of the vacation party are found to be missing from their beds, and when pleading cries ring through the halls of the great house, terror grips hearts and minds, and the vacationers are brought face to face with the unknown. Both that blurb from the back of the original paperback, I guess, and Hendrix make you think that it's this crazy thing, and it just isn't. But it is a good book. Let me put it this way. It is very well written. And I think what it's trying to do, what John Christopher's trying to do, comes out in that very end of the book. The very, very end, I kind of feel like, okay. But that does make it a bit hard to recommend, because while I think that last quarter, which Grady Hendrix didn't seem very fond of, I think that it's not like a bloodbath or some crazy stuff happening. It really isn't. It's mostly a bloodless book. I think that it's well done, and I like what Christopher did with it. Is it exciting? No, it's not. I mean, it'd be hard for me to say it's really exciting. It isn't. I think it's interesting, and I think if you like slow-paced horror, then it could be a good book for you. Very interesting and unique characters built. Each one, you really get a feel for how that character is, and it's a horror story, so it's sort of like the negative traits of these characters are really amped up, in a sense, sort of like magnified a bit to become problematic for the novel. Kind of what this is. It's sort of a psychological novel. In fact, it definitely is a psychological novel. And the Little People, their role is very secondary. It's really not, they are really not the focus of this book. Rather, they're a catalyst for the characters that come to this manor. In fact, I wonder if you could eliminate them altogether and have some sort of other thing happen in this book and still get the same result. I think that might have been a more successful work for John Christopher, just because the fact that these are little people makes it so fantastic, and that is really not played up. I mean, there's some scenes there that seem very like, ooh, something interesting could really happen with this, but you don't get a lot from the little people themselves. It's more the regular humans that are staying here and their reactions, their inner problems. These little people, I guess this starts to get into spoilers, I guess. So I'm going to stop there and finish, and then I'll just put some spoiler at the end. The third quarter of the book, boy, I'm all over the place. The third quarter of the book really begins to build, like, okay, so that's when you finally start seeing things and you kind of start wondering and you think, where's this going to go? And the last quarter does not go in a crazy horror story direction that the cover to the original paperback or Grady Hendrix sort of suggest. Actually, Grady Hendrix doesn't suggest it. He says that it doesn't. It kind of ends up being something else. he kind of actually acknowledges that he truthfully does say what the ending of the book is like, or mood-wise. It just seems like the build-up for the novel in that original paperback makes it seem as though it's one thing, whereas this cover and the back of this book, which just sort of very gently sort of suggest some things, are a lot more faithful to what the book is actually like. And here it just says, the Irish countryside can be the most beautiful place on earth. Daniel and Bridget thought so when they moved to the old castle she had inherited in that remote part of the land. But there was something wrong with the castle and its sinister past. Something horribly wrong. The mysterious visitors in the dead of night were only the first signs of an escalating nightmare which could only end one way, in terror. That's a lot closer, very much closer, to what the mood of the book is like. Now, I will say that ending, right? The last quarter of the book, I think I started to see like, okay, I see what he's doing. He's exploring the psychological damage that everyone in this house, staying at this house, has, and how they cope with it. And these little people are like a catalyst for it. And that, to me, started to explain why Christopher took so much time writing this. Because before I read that, before I got to the end, I just kind of felt like, what are we doing here? It just felt like you're spending so much time building these characters, but nothing has happened yet. So I did enjoy the book. I think it's a good, I think it was a good book, but it is a tougher book to recommend because I think a lot of people are going to get caught somewhere in the before the halfway point, maybe, or even before the last quarter of the book. I think you're going to get caught up, or a lot of people could, and just kind of think this book is boring. It's not very interesting. It's not particularly long, and this format, 224 pages. But the print is not exactly big, so maybe closer to 250 or something. I know if you were to compare it to like a mass market paperback, something like that. That's a long way to go before you start to get payoff. If you don't enjoy the writing up to that point, if you don't come to a book to sort of languish in the writing, as it were, then you might find this book just isn't for you. But if you enjoy very good writing, and if you like John Christopher, I think it's actually pretty cool. I really did like the writing. The writing really expertly sort of crafted characters and their relationships and the problems they were having, I thought were great. They definitely elicited anger at certain characters, like Christopher wanted you to. You know, he's trying to make you dislike certain characters for certain reasons, and then you find that dislike swings both ways. And I think that you can genuinely feel that. I think he really is successful in that way, and I think that goes through good character development. So that's really strong in here, and the writing in general is very eloquent. I think it's probably good. It's not exactly flowery. It's not purple, so to speak. It really sort of showcased Christopher's writing skill, which I was pretty impressed with. But if you're not there for that, if you want the action to start, if you're looking for a horror story, then I don't think that you're going to like this story. But if you come to this novel wanting good reading with a interesting sort of idea explored, okay, just know that exploration is not particularly vast, and that the most of the story is about good writing and good character development. In that respect, I like this book. In the other respect, I've spent time thinking, why did he write this book? I want to do a little bit of spoiling here because there is some stuff in here. I don't feel too bad about spoiling it, but if you don't want to be spoiled, then I guess you could stop here or you could skip to the end. Who do I think? Do I think this is really going to ruin the book? Not, maybe. I'd say 50-50. If you're not going to read the book, then what do you care? If you really plan on reading this book, then I don't think that the payoff is exactly why you would read this far. But in the last quarter of the book, the little people, and this Grady Hendrix sort of mentions this too, is that they sort of have like psychic abilities, and that they sort of manipulate the people staying in this home. They sort of manipulate their minds, and they sort of have these sort of I guess like phantasmagoric sort of visions. These sort of the damage that they have their whole lives. And it's sort of like I said, it's like a catalyst for the problems that they've had. And if you'll forgive me from reading the very last page a bit, I think that there's an interesting idea that he kind of brings up, and it kind of made me at the very end think, okay, that's what this story's about. Bridget thought about the little people hiding in their holes and binding up their wounds. They had brought gifts, she saw, madness and self-knowledge. Or were those two the same? No, she thought, I am sane enough, just a little unhappy, but it won't last. And perhaps, after all, they had given people what they most wanted, what they were capable of taking. And I think that kind of shows what Christopher was going for. The little people didn't necessarily have any sort of malice towards these humans, but rather amplified, magnified the problems that the people staying at this house already had. And so if they were troubled, then they became more troubled. And some of them could handle it, and some of them couldn't. I liked it. If you like slower paced horror, I think this could be for you. If you don't, then you may give this one a pass and find something else for John Christopher. So obviously, the Tripod series, young adult, a really great thing. I was actually really surprised at how enjoyable and wonderful that book was. So if you're new to John Christopher, that would probably be maybe a better place to start. But if you like slower paced horror, then this might be for you. Thanks for watching. My name is Virgil, and this is Literally Books. Consider liking and subscribing if you want to support the things that I'm doing, I guess. We've got more samurai type reads, Japanese themed reads that I'll be doing soon. I'm almost to the end of Shogun. That's a pretty bold statement because Shogun is a long book. So that should be coming soon. Anyway,